Une balle, deux balles, pas assez de balles, trois. Un mort, deux blessés, l'affaire Villanueva. Un citoyen tué par la police fait l'effet d'un feu de bail. Touchy comme sujet, parle-en pas au bye-bye. Plus facile de faire référence à Montréal-Noir, Montréal-Nord, Montréal-Marne, Montréal-Mort. Plus d'investissement conséquent, monsieur le maire. Et peut-être que Montréal-Noir serait Montréal-Art. Faut pas trop prendre les citoyens pour des caves. C'est pas juste l'économie qui fait en sorte que l'heure est grave. On veut te faire peur en parlant des gangs de rue. Je suis noir et je t'avoue que moi, j'en ai rarement vu. Mais j'ai connu des hommes qui se sont perdus dans le froid de la rue. Je parlerai pas de gang, mais je parlerai de mauvais choix d'individus. Blanc, noir, brun, jaune et même bleu. Le crime organisé se fout de ton thème pour mon vieux. Combien de morts va-t-il falloir avoir pour que le système nous donne l'heure juste? Combien de morts va-t-il falloir avoir pour que le système nous donne l'heure juste? Combien de morts va-t-il falloir avoir pour que le système nous donne l'heure juste? C'est pas le citoyen qui est stupide, non. Je crois que c'est le système qui...
So once again, thanks for having me. I'm just going to start everything. I'm going to be moving around just to let you know, but I'm just going to start with a video very quickly. I'm just showing the video. It's just because we have to remember that we are on Mohawk land, so every time before presentation I like to remember everybody that we are right now on First Nation territory. It's just very important for me and just part of the history. And I'm Will Prosper. For those of you who don't know me, I'm just going to introduce myself. Normally I had a bulletproof form for this presentation, and somehow I lost it, so I don't have it with me. So you're gonna have to excuse myself. It's gonna be a little bit harder today for me to do that. I'm just gonna lower the volume because you won't hear anything otherwise. There you go. So sometimes I might be lost in my presentation. If I get lost, that's okay. That's gonna be part of life. That's the way it is. I'm also francophone, so I have a thick accent. I'm very proud of it. I don't have any problem with it. So it's always, and I was just in the subway today and I was hearing somebody saying, wow, cette bouffe-là, c'est tellement gueux. Then I turned around and I was expecting an Asian person to speak like that, and it was an Arabic person. So it was very interesting, and I love this mixing of all the communities. It's always very interesting for me. I think it's this mic who's making that noise actually. There you go. Okay, so first of all, like I said, I went to Calixte-la-Vallée High School, which is a school located in Montreal-North. It's this school actually, this one right there. This beautiful building that you can see growing up in Montreal-North. It's very familiar with the gel and with all the béton we see, or the cement and everything. And there's a school that is worse than this one. This one is not too bad actually, but if you go to Saint-Michel and you go to Louis-Joseph Papineau, there's actually no window at all, so that's even worse. So I went to Calixte-la-Vallée. Then I went to Dawson College to study. Yes, so lots of people from Dawson College. And I got lost in social science like a lot of people, but I still managed to graduate from that. Then I went to this university of Concordia. It's actually the first time I'm back since a long time. And I came to study cinematography. I don't know what's wrong with the volume. Sorry, I'm not a technician. sound technician. So I came to this university, and I tried to get in cinematography. Of course, it was a program that there's a lot of people that attended, so I chose philosophy instead. Then a friend of mine said, well, Will, you know, I'm going to the RCMP. I'm going to pass all the exam. Why don't you come and join me for that? And I said, okay, I might as well do that. You know, I have time to do that. And I went and passed all the exam. So I joined the RCMP. They sent me to Saskatchewan, Regina. That's where they train all the cadets from the RCMP. And I was sent to Montreal, which is a First Nation reserve, as we say, or I like to say territory, of course. It's the Cree Nation. So I'll say Tansé to all the First Nation or the native people over here. And I stayed there for 5 years. Then I came back over here to study cinematography in Quebec City. And the first thing that happened to me was very interesting already, because when I came back to Quebec, and I still had my badge as a police officer, I went to Quebec City, and I got pulled over by a police officer as I was driving in the city, of course, like it happens many times for lots of people. While I was driving, he pulled me over. He said, well, can I see your paper and license? And I asked him for what? Well, it's just a routine check. I guess lots of people have faced a routine check. He asked me for my papers, and of course, you know, being a police officer, I just flipped my badge, and he saw my badge. He said, oh, je m'excuse, je savais pas. But he knew I was black, but he didn't know I was a cop, of course. But that's the first thing he told me, so that told me it was already racial profiling. That was pretty obvious from the pulling over that he did with me. And before I keep on going, I just want to ask in this room, if people that have been controlled by the police, they felt that they've been victim of racial profiling. Is there anybody that can raise their hands that they feel that they have been victim of racial profiling at least one time? Okay, that's one time. Who has been a victim 2 times? Pulled over on the street or anywhere? 2 times, just raise your hand. Okay, 3 times? No, you have to see, you have to take a look, because that's a lot, you know? And 4 times? 5 times? Okay, 6 times. See, look who's keeping their hands up. I got my hands up also, and you have to remember that. Okay, now let's go 10 times. 15 times. 20 times. Is that normal, you know? 20 times. For myself, I've been pulled over or controlled by the police over 35 times. Is that normal? I don't think it's normal. And because I've been driving since I'm 16 years old, and you live in Montreal-Nord, you get pulled over for any reason. At first, you're very angry. You're very upset. And then you just get used to it. You know, you're just like, okay, another time. Because there's nothing you really can do about it, you know. You can file a complaint. You can put something in your agenda to say, oh, I was pulled over today by these police officers. And it's very limited, the kind of action that you can do against racial profiling. And that's something that I'm going to discuss a little bit more afterwards. So after that, you know, there was an incident that happened in Montreal-Nord. And that incident was the shooting and killing of Freddy Villanueva, who was shot on the August 9th, 2008. He was shot by l'agent Jalou Lapouette, and his badge number was 3776. See, all these numbers, I kept them in mind because there's somebody else that taught me that practice, and that's Alex Popovich, which is founder also of the Coalition Against Police Brutality. So you always have to remember who's anyways, the police officer who committed these kind of crimes. So Freddy Villanueva was shot in a park while he was playing, that's what they said, the police officer. Is everybody familiar with that story? First of all, the story of Freddy Villanueva. Very familiar. Yeah, there was a lot of racial profiling in Montreal-Nord at that time. This is a little video that we've done with some friends of mine that was participating at that time on a rally in Montreal-Nord. They've done a song for Freddy Villanueva. At that time I had dreads, so I cut my hair, so you know, that's way back when. It's just So many artists, you know, they revolted. They said, well, you know, that's something that we cannot tolerate, so everybody gathered around. And we formed, on that night of the riot, I was actually in the streets, and for everybody that knows TVA, they were covering, of course, this kind of news. And I remember what was very interesting when I was walking in the streets is that I saw people on the balcony, and white people, old folks, and they were telling me, you go guys, you go get them. That's what they were telling me. Allez-y, vous êtes capables, parce que even them, they understood what we live every day because they saw the police officer pulling us every day in the streets. So they understood that there was a frustration that was building up, and it was just a matter of time that something was gonna explode. So that's what happened on that night. So I was walking the streets. I could see the police officer who were hiding beside some blocks, like, you know, it's like we're in Iraq or something. And same thing for the newspaper, they didn't know what to do, you know, the news journalists, they were also hiding by the walls, they were afraid of everybody that was walking the street. So it was really nice to see that on that day, and what I mostly remember on that night was the smell of these kind of things, you know, burnt metal, and that's what you can smell all over the place. And that was the memory I have. So anyways, let's move on because, you know, I can speak forever about this. So what we've done is we've created Montreal-Nord Républik, and we've made some requests, and that is some demands. We asked for a public inquiry, which finished 5 years afterward. We asked for an end to racial profiling that was conducted everywhere in Montreal. We also asked for the resignation of the mayor of Montreal-Nord, because the mayor always said that he never saw that coming. He said, well, I was not expecting that, I never saw that coming. I was surprised it happened, although all the statistics, everything was telling us that it was just a matter of time that it was going to happen. We also asked for a memorial in the memory of Freddy Villanueva. I think it was very important for us to remember what happened on that time. And we also asked to recognize the principle that as long as there is economic insecurities, there will be social insecurities. So we attended the city bureau. I have to do everything at the same time, so that was the mayor of Montreal-Nord, Marcel Parent. So that's the guy we asked the resignation for. And the election were like just 2 months or 3 months after, and we got his head. You know, he said, well, I'm not going to represent myself, that's it, I'm done with this. And he did not come back. We've done a couple of marches as well. And that was me, that wasn't me, of course. That was some citizens that were really upset of what happened with the Freddy Villanueva, also asking those demands. And the person that made those demands on that day, she's sitting right there, it's Narges Mustafa. So she contacted the Montreal-Nord Républik because she was also upset of that. So she's the co-spokesperson also for Montreal-Nord Républik. You have to remember that Will Prosper is not Will Prosper without everybody that was around me. So me, I'm just sending the message for everybody else. I'm not the only one. So that was me doing a nice action, of course, that feature in Journal de Montréal, Journal de Montréal, no? That was in the Journal de Montréal. Of course, you know, I'm not a politician at that time. You know, if I was a politician, I would have been like Barack Obama. Well, plays to the nation. I will make sure that my finger is not pointing at anybody. I will make sure that my thumb is up. So you know, you're always giving me thumbs up already, and I'm very firm with a hand like that. So that's why they have their hands like that, by the way. Me, I'm not a PR guy. So the first thing I did, and they took that picture, is that I was telling the mayor, is it normal that somebody got shot 1 time, then 2 times, then 3 times, then 4 times? And they took that picture, and that was in the media. That's what they do. That's what they do, and that's not a surprise. So that's how I was portrayed in the media. And I look very upset, which I was, so I don't mind that. And I'm not doing PR works also, so I don't give a, you know what. So that's okay. And so that's what happened on that day. And we put those demands. Then we went and do some a march also in Montreal-Nord, and it was attended by lots of people. And it's probably the first big march that was held in Montreal-Nord. I remember when I was going to Quebec-Valley, there was also a march that was done, but it was for student fee, and that's way back when they were already complaining about that. So I was already part of it also. And that's the people marching in the street, of course. And they wanted, you know, justice. That's the mother of Freddy Villanueva, and that's the father of Freddy Villanueva as well. And that were marching in the street. And you know, these people, for me, they're the most courageous people in the world. I don't know how they can act, and also with Danny Villanueva as well. I don't know how they can, you know, because I've been, you know, we spoke a lot with them, and I just find them so strong and so courageous to go through this whole process, and with all the time never being upset about anything, with always showing grace and their authenticity.
they're very courageous, and I have the utmost respect for all the family and what they've been through, and nobody should have to go through this kind of thing in their life. So that was what we've done. And after that, we've done a lot of things. Meanwhile, there was also a forum that had to take place at that time. We did a social forum called Woodstock, of course. It's just to make a link with Woodstock, of course. We did that in the hood. We had lots of artists from the neighborhood that participated for the first time in this kind of show, we can say, because we did a show in a park, of course. And there was people also as a social forum. We had some people presenting different cases. We had an ex-gang member also speaking about different stuff, education and stuff like that. It was very important for the community. And I remember on one day there was a young person that I knew he was a gang member, and he just performed. That was the first time he performed in front of a crowd. He said, "Will, it's too bad I never have the chance to do such a thing, because most of the time, I will never have a chance to perform on a stage like that, and I wish I could do that all my life instead of what I'm doing today." So, you have to give opportunity to the youth to do something else, and I'm pretty sure they will get away from the world they're living in. Sometimes it's just a matter of circumstance, of course. And that was another speech that we done. That's where Felipe Villanueva was shot, where the people are standing. I know it's a very small picture. I don't know if you can all see it, but that's where he was shot. So before I get into that, that's another topic that we'll get into. So that's what we've done. Then other things happened. There was an earthquake also that happened in Haiti, and we've done a show to raise some money. We've raised $100,000, which is a lot of money from a citizen. And what's funny about that is that we've done that show at the Tillis Theater, and because they gave us access at that time, and I didn't expect that to happen. But when we did the show at the Tillis Theater, we didn't expect that there will be a competition between the different cellular company like Videotron and other stuff. So now they were competing, or they had a competition to make sure who was going to hold a telethon to raise some money for Haiti. So even an incident, an earthquake like Haiti, it starts to be a business for some people, just to sensibilize the population that they are doing something for the Haitian people, because their Videotron is a nice company and they want to make sure that we're doing something to go back to the community. But what happened is that we were part of lots of Haitian people from the community that was organizing that at the time. And it was very important for us to have a grassroots movement to show that the Asian community was standing together and was doing a show like that to raise the money. And we had CBC going on, but somebody from the organization left, and I won't tell you his name. If you want to ask me afterwards, I will gladly tell you. And he went to see TVA, which finally conducted the Téléthon for Haiti and raised the money. And once again, it looked like I won't say that, but it looked like the French-Canadian helped the Asian people instead of the Asian people organizing themselves for the community. So there's a big difference between the two, and I'm still pissed off because of that. But it doesn't matter, at least we raised some money, and that's what's mostly important for the community. That happened, the G20 summit in Toronto, and we attended that with Narges, who is there also. Of course, for me it's important to stand for your rights. And we went from Concordia University, of course. We attended that on, what was the date? June 16. It's funny, I spent 3 days in jail and I can't remember when it was. 26? Yeah, 26. That's when it was. Yeah, you're right. It was on the 26th. Yeah, 26th of June 2010. We left from Concordia University. It was organized by the CLAC. We went in different buses. Then we stayed at Toronto University Gymnasium, where we got not pulled over, but when we got awakened by the police.
Oh my God.
These images are the police that were arresting us in the gym while we were sleeping. It was 7 in the morning. I still have these images from the camera. That is some friends of mine that were sitting there. And that's you. That's not just. And these are the police officers. Just to let you know what happened is that, there was a few incidents in, yeah, that's me. Okay. Okay, so what happened on that day is we went and protested the day before, and we marched all over the place. And we saw lots of action, but it was mostly a police officer, you know, beating some people down. We didn't see any burnt car, because the only time I saw burnt car in Toronto was when I was watching the TV. So it was weird for me to see the burnt car. I'm not saying the car wasn't burnt or anything like that. I'm just saying that there was a lot of people. There was over 100,000 people, and I never saw any car being burned at that time. So yeah, so it was very interesting. So what happened is at 7 o'clock in the morning, we heard some noise, and people were marching in. It was police officers, of course, and they came into the gym. And I heard some kicking, I heard some noise, and being a police officer, I'm like, do you guys have a warrant? And the response of the police officer at that time, we had a special weapon. He hit me right in the shoulder, bang, back the fuck off. That was his response, because at that time, you know, he said also, it's not Canada over here. It's not Canada, but you know, it doesn't apply the rule during the G20 summit. It's a different time of the year, so who cares about, you know, your citizen right? We can take that away. So that's when you realize all your rights can go away very quickly in a very quick period. It doesn't matter who you are. And I ended up spending 3 days in jail because of that. Also for other people that went there, they spent 3 days in jail. And in these 3 days, I did not have any access to calling a lawyer, to calling my family. I was sitting in a jail cell that was this one right there, you know, similar to these kind of jail cells that you had over there. It's about, I will say, 15 inches, it's very small, 15 feet by 10 feet, I should say. And if you take a look at the washroom over there, it's an open door. And we were about 20 people standing in over there, so we had to take some rotations. Some people were sleeping on the floor, and when they were done sleeping, they had to get up, then we take their place, so we were switching all the time. We were fed cheese sandwiches, and I did eat cheese sandwiches for a couple of years afterwards. And there's another story, but I won't tell that story because it's anyways, I remember, because I'll tell that story. I don't know if you're gonna mind, but you know, it's gonna go up. And lots of people were being strip searched at that time. And there was 1,100 people being arrested at the G20 summit. And the people that actually had some that were found guilty or that pleaded guilty, it's under 10. So if you take that number, the percentage, it's under 1% of the people that were arrested that actually had a charge. Everybody else was released. The charge was dropped. But like I was saying, sometimes, you know, you guys have to keep pace with me because I go from one story to another, so that's the way I am. But when I was standing in that cell in front, people were marching by to go see the corporal. And the people that were marching by in front of us, they just had been strip searched. And I remember I saw somebody that was strip searched, and I know that person a lot. And that person looked at me, and she said, "Fuck, man, they just strip searched me," and started crying. And it's like getting raped by the police force. And just because you were protesting, you were not doing anything. So anyways, so that's a short story, but these kind of action, you know, in a kind of police state is some stuff that, you know, you might expect. Anyways, after that, you know, there was also the Montreal strike, not the Montreal strike, but a student movement that I took part as well. And there was also, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the campaign against the cultural discrimination of hip-hop. At one time, Le Bar Le Pionnier was not ended a permit to have liquor because they were playing hip-hop music. And that was back in 2012, I believe. Yeah, exactly. And there was a lot of cases of that, so we just decided, and some people are there, I just saw, yeah, there you go, that took part of this protest. And yeah, so they were refusing licenses to bars because they were playing hip-hop music, and apparently hip-hop music, you know, that's gangster music. It's going to bring some gang members who will go and rape their daughters, I should say, or do something like that, you know. That's what they're thinking. And what is very funny is that the Commission des Alcools, Courses et Jeux du Québec, they never banned any bar because they were playing a type of music. And that goes way back when the rockers in the 1980s and 90s, when they were bombing different places, clubs and stuff like that. They never decided to ban a type of music but that type of music was actually associated with the black community, of course, so that's why they decided to ban this kind of music. And since then, they haven't done it because we did a lot of protests against that, so they've never done it anymore. So let's talk about some stats about Montreal-Nord, for those of you who are not familiar with Montreal-Nord. Is there lots of people that know Montreal-Nord? Of course you know Montreal-Nord, but is there people from Montreal-Nord? One person?
A lot of friends of mine.
A lot of friends of yours? All right. So here's some stats of Montreal-Nord at that time when these things happened. The racialized minorities in Montreal-Nord, it's actually 46% of the population which is racialized. I like to say racialized and not visible minorities, because racialized is that we force them to be a race. So that's why I like to use that term. And it's 46%. These minorities in Montreal, it's actually 17%. The number of monoparental families in Montreal-Nord, it's 41% compared to 18% in Montreal. The number of people unemployed, it's 18% in Montreal-Nord compared to 7% in Montreal. People living in poverty, it's 54% in Montreal-Nord compared to 21%. The people under 20 years old who don't have a high school diploma in Montreal-Nord, it's 42.5% compared to 26% for the rest of the island. Only 1 out of 10 person will attend university from Montreal-Nord. And these stats, you know, when you have these kind of stats, you have to know there's a problem in Montreal-Nord, and you need to take actions to make sure there's a difference, you know. And that's why we asked for the resignation of the mayor of Montreal-Nord, because these stats were available at that time, and he received a report. And how come he was never taking any action? And I'm not even saying that today they're taking action against that, because at the time it was it was Lynn Beauchamp, who was responsible for the education in Montreal-Nord. She was actually the deputy of Montreal-Nord. And we had one of the worst situations in Montreal-Nord for the kids dropping out of school. Also, let's go back to the people being controlled in Montreal-Nord. I think it's very important to know those numbers that are coming by the SPVM. At that time, the number of black people being controlled by the police in Montreal-Nord, it was 52% of the people that were being controlled, they were black. The population of black person living in Montreal-Nord at that time, it was 17%. So you can see that number is very staggering. And one thing that is very interesting, because I have those different places and cities around Montreal, Sainte-Anne-de-Bellevue, there's a 1% population of black people in Sainte-Anne-de-Bellevue, but they are being controlled 13% of the time. And those numbers are all the same. You know, if you go to Côte-des-Neiges, it's 9% of the population that are black, and they're being controlled 42% of the time. So, you know, those numbers are very similar. And that was since the creation of the group Eclipse. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Eclipse Squad, who was formed to combat the gang members. It was formed in 2006. I will give you more stats about that. And what is the definition of racial profiling? It's the use of an individual's race or ethnicity by law enforcement personnel as a key factor in deciding whether to engage in enforcement or to make a traffic stop or routine check and stuff like that. I'm just going to show you also an example that I have of a youth in Montreal-Nord being controlled by a police force, and that was that happened last year. And what's very interesting is that sometimes you'll see police officer, and it happened to me a couple of times in Montreal-Nord, is you'll see a police officer that's driving in the streets, or even you're playing, first of all, you're playing basketball, let's say, with a couple of friends, and you're from a racialized minority, and you see somebody taking pictures. You don't understand, but they're just taking pictures, taking picture of you. They're taking picture, and then you go, who's that guy? Nobody knows who's that guy. Then this guy walks away. Then you will see a police officers afterward that they will go in the street, and they have I don't want to say a black book, but they have a picture book of people, and then they're looking at these people. Okay, does this guy have a warrant? Does this guy have this? Does this guy have that? So they're just flipping the pages, looking at the faces, because lots of black people look alike. So it's always hard for them to know. Yeah, well, you know, you know what I mean. So that's what it is. So then they walk in the park. If they don't know a person, like what happened to Danny Villanueva, the police officer did not know Danny Villanueva. So what he wanted to do is identify him. So he found an offense that he did not see, because he never saw any dice or any money on the ground, because the offense was gambling. But at the coroner's inquest, he said, I never saw him gamble, I never saw any money. So he think he sees Danny doing an offense. So he just asks for him so he can get his information. So he's gonna fine him a ticket so he has his information. And it can happen for anything. If you sit on a bench, on the top of the bench like that, that's a fine also. So lots of kids are getting a fine for that. If you spit on the ground, of course, it's a fine. Even if you walk on the grass in a park, that could be a fine also. They're not applying that, but it's part of the municipal laws. Yeah. So you cannot walk on the grass in the park. Yeah. It's actually a law. So all those laws, you apply them against some racialized minorities, so you can control them, you can have their information. And what happened, I just told you the number of people living in poverty, of course, in Montreal-Nord. So if you get a fine, and you're already living in poverty, you're not going to pay that fine. So you're going to end up having a warrant. So let me show you the situation of somebody ending up having a warrant, you'll see what it looks like. Unfortunately, I just have to find the image, of course. Like I said, I had the bulletproof form before that I just lost. So for me, it's I have to go through all the longest form of my presentation to find all the information that I had. So I'm just going to bring it up. It's going to come very quickly. Don't you worry. Gotta hear the noise at first.
Il n'y a pas d'instinct, casse-toi, c'est tout, Gilles. Attends. Il n'y a pas de raison d'être appelé pour de vrai, on marche, on cherche chez nous. Il n'y a pas d'élève. Est-ce qu'on a une infraction? Est-ce qu'on a une infraction, monsieur? Est-ce qu'on est là? Cache-toi, je sais pas, mais...
So he asked the right question. I'm just going to stop it now. He said, did we commit a crime? And that's what we tell them, because sometimes we give formation to the youth, or we spoke to different youth centers. And the first thing they have to ask, did I commit a crime? Because if you're not committing a crime, the police cannot control you. So he's asking the right question.
Non, il y a une infraction, Gilles. Ça peut pas qu'elle peut, lui. Monsieur, aucune infraction ici. Oh, c'est quoi, Gilles? Yo, calme-toi, calme-toi, tu fais rien. Mais comment calme-toi, ça va chez nous, Gilles, tu te rends pas, mais... Yo, c'est filmé, donc.
Second thing that person did right is having a camera. I should say that's the first thing he did right. He opens up his camera, and that's what we always tell him. Keep your camera on, because if you see the police officer, you never know what's going to happen. Bring a camera, make sure it's on.
Mais pourquoi tu ne peux pas? Il a fait quoi? Il a fait quoi? Non, je m'en fous pas, toi. Il y a quoi, là? Non. Il a fait pourquoi vous les avez arrêtés? Pourquoi vous tirez? Il a fait quoi?
See, when you're a police officer, because I also study, I was a police officer, first thing you have to tell a person, you're being arrested for whatever it is. Never mentioned that. None of the police officer mentioned that. That's the first thing you have to say. He was right, because he was arrested afterwards, so he saw them in court, unfortunately, not for the right reason.
C'est quoi qu'il a fait pour de vrai, Gilles?
So this lasts for a long time. I'm just gonna take it off because I have other visuals that I want to show. But he kept on filming, and he was there with 4 of his buddies, and everybody got arrested. Pour, comment on dit ça? How we say that in English is... entrave à un agent de la paix. So there's a term in English. Obstructing a police officer. Excuse me? Even the guy that was filming got arrested. Everybody, there were 4 people, plus this guy that was arrested. They all got arrested, they all got their information, and they are now going to court because of that. So that's how you start from nothing. That's a situation that happened from nothing. They were not doing anything wrong, and then they got arrested for obstruction to a police officer. So they get into the system. And because that guy, apparently, he had a warrant, they were going through that book, and he had a warrant because he did not pay a fine. So of course that's what they said afterwards, but I don't know if they find that out before or after, I don't know, I have no clue. But the story of the youth, they said, you know, why they're following us, and one of them give them the finger, that's what he said. But there's no, you know, I'm not recommending to give the finger to a police officer because that might happen. But there's nothing wrong if you give a finger to a police officer. You know, actually, it's not against the law. But right now, they passed a law a year ago, and if you curse a police officer, you can also be arrested for that. You can have a fine for this. You know, they just passed a law recently a year ago because of that. And that's how you start to criminalize the youth, just for a little petty action. And these kind of action, they happen quite often all over the city. This person was not doing anything wrong, got arrested, his friend, 4 friends got arrested, and they're now coming into the system. Once they get arrested, some of them will go to jail, and some of them will just go to the police station. What is the first question that they will ask at the police station? Which gang are you part of? So they're already criminalizing, they're asking which gang are they from, you know? And before I mentioned that, in 2005, the SPVM, they estimated that there was 500 gang members in the larger Montreal area. And of course, we always associate gang members with black people. And the population of black people in Montreal was around 150,000 to 200,000. And there's only 500 gang members that were accounted for by the police force of Montreal. But in 2006, they founded the group Eclipse. And the group Eclipse is mostly responsible for the rise of racial profiling in the city. And since it was formed in 2006, in 2007 already, they had 5,597 gang members. In 2 years, you know, it increased 10 times, just in 2 years by the group Eclipse. So they were actually pulling everybody out. Out of this number, there was also some white people that were part of it. It was 19%. But the vast number was, of course, black people. And that's how they raised their database of gang members. And that's very interesting because, you know, if you take a look at these kind of numbers, that means that 1 out of 5 young black youths is a gang member in the city of Montreal. So if you see a if you see a group of 5, 1 of them is a gang member. So that's how you start to criminalize your youth. You know, it's a slow process, but it works, you know. And what's interesting also is that the gang members are actually accounted for 1.6% of the crimes committed in Montreal. So it's very little the number of crimes that are being conducted by gang members. And it's steadily declining. So from 2008 to 2009, it's declining by 25%. And what's funny is that if you have a youth that will steal something in a grocery shop, if he's black or if he's Latino, if he's Arabic, he's going to come into the process of being a gang member. They're going to ask him which gang is he from. But if you just do the same thing in Sept-Îles, you're just a young offender. See, there's a big difference between the two. It doesn't mean because somebody is a young offender or is doing a petty crime, a little crime, how come he falls in the process of being a gang member? He's going to fall in that database of 5,000. I don't even know what it is today, but that number was in 2007. So that's what they're already creating. And I don't know if you remember, there was an incident in Toronto where a young girl, a young white girl, she was shot by a bullet that was...
Stray.
Yeah, a stray bullet, thank you very much. And unfortunately that happened, you know, that's a very, 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 very sad story. And it was fired by somebody that was a gang member. In Toronto, it was done downtown. And since that incident, the conservative government, that is Harper government, of course, they decided to allow more money to fight, you know, the gang members, of course, because whenever there's a situation like that, and they know that the people will feel sad for what happened, rightly so, it's a time to push some severe laws or to be more strict because they like to be tough on crime, like they like to say. So they gave a budget of 400 million grant to all the police force all over the country, and that's when the Eclipse Squad was formed. They gave them 37.5 million per year. So the SPVM, if you don't know, they have a budget of 670 million per year to take care of the population. And I don't know if you guys know, but the crime is steadily declining every year. I'll give you the number afterward, but we are at the same rate of crime since 1972 right now. So it's steadily declining since 1980s, it's always going down. So, but we're getting more police officers. Why we are getting more police officers? we have to ask a question. But before I go into that, I'll just give you another chapter of racism and history of racism in Quebec. I'm just going to show you a quick clip that was done by the ONF, the NFB, I should say, the National Film Board. And it's nothing to say against the National Film Board because I also work over there. But it's just funny that, you know, I found that on the web. So if you don't understand French, maybe you should get somebody to translate that for you, or I will do the translation afterwards. Boy, it's
même manquant d'affection, on vient des endurcis à Saint-Henri.
Saint-Henri a sa réserve noire, mais on y pratique peu la ségrégation. D'abord parce que les nègres sont en minorité, qu'ils habitent les mêmes rues, et puis surtout, suprême rassurance, ils parlent anglais. Le décor, hors des taudis bien filmés, devient joli et supportable. Et pour éviter de tomber dans le paupérisme, nous n'avons pas rapporté d'images de fond de cour, de mouches, d'immondices. Il y en a, c'est tout ce qu'il faut savoir. Il ne devrait pas y en avoir, c'est tout ce que nous voudrions que l'on sache.
It's very slick the way they put it. I don't know if everybody understood what they said. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to translate it. I'll show you how weak I am in translating stuff. They said Saint-Henri, they have their reserve of black and niggas. And fortunately for us, they speak English. And we are actually showing you nice images through the lens, because if we wanted to show you the backyards, it will be even worse. And we're not showing you the flies and everything that's around it. And, you know, and he says something that is very classy for me, is that you have to know there are some, but we wish there wasn't some. Yeah. But he's saying that just after he spoke about the fly and those different things. So you don't know what he's talking about, but you know they're talking about black people. And you can see the images, what the kids, the young white kids are doing is they're throwing rocks. So it's very symbolic, you know, the message that they're sending is very symbolic. That's a documentary that was done in Saint-Henri in 1962. Now I'm going to show you another video. It's 5 septembre à Saint-Henri. You can find that. It's actually on the National Film Board that you can look at it. It's very easy to get that documentary. And also there was other documentary by Gilles Gros, which were excellent, and he showed that, you know, the different communities, even the First Nation, at that time, give them a time to speak. So there's also some other stuff that was done at the same time. But I just want to make sure that, you know, that was very common for people to speak like that at that time. Now I'm just going to show you another video from the National Film Board. It's called 80 Quebec. And that video was done in 1985. And again, it was done at the NFB. And I'm just going to find the right spot to give it to you.
Pour un site, il n'y a pas d'ouvrage pour nous autres mêmes, parce qu'il n'y a pas plus pour les autres. On n'est pas en 40, de la guerre 40, après la guerre, attends la guerre, une personne a fait le job, puis 10 minutes après, il y en avait un autre. Et là, il n'y a pas d'autre job. On crève, là.
Just saying there's no job?
Qu'ils prennent, on va tous fournir ensemble, payer des gars de taxi, les autres avec. Ils remettent ses bateaux, puis on va ça par chez eux.
He's talking about black people, just send them on the boats.
Je sais pas de port, il y a si j'en ai pas, je prends une tête l'hiver. Ma mère 41 dans le corps, puis c'est correct après. Tu ris pas là-bas, là.
J'en pas de voyage, je suis pas intéressé. Je plaide une bonne cause.
Autant que possible.
C'est des spécialistes des sightseeing pour faire le tour de la ville. Pas de problème, madame, pas de problème, mais il faut faire le tour de la ville. Quand ils te demandent du service voyageur où est Sainte-Catherine, ils ne savent même pas si le chemin contre Sainte-Catherine ou Sainte-Catherine, ça commence Sainte-Catherine. Puis avec 4 ans, je suis dangereux du taxi, mais le seul problème dans le moment, c'est qu'on a trop de Tarzan, anciennement, on avait écrit Tarzan. C'est ça qui est notre gros problème.
Et ici, quand ils viennent sur la ligne, qu'est-ce qui arrive?
En autant que possible, j'essaie de les boycotter, en ce qui me concerne. Tu as déjà mangé un escopé avant de te coucher? C'est dur à digérer, hein? Mais pour moi, c'est à peu près la même chose pour moi. Ça ne fait pas la peine de tout le monde, nous sommes en contrebalance, c'est perdu. Moi, je gagne ma vie, je me figure professionnel, puis à 24 ans, je suis dans l'écurie du taxi. Fait que je ne suis pas un bon étalon là, je ne le serai jamais.
Comme ça, sur la ligne ici, vous n'aimez pas les avoir?
Ah, sur la ligne ici ou n'importe ailleurs, en ce qui me concerne, j'ai été vite. J'ai mon temps pour tirer avec les autres.
Ouais.
On ne fera jamais un bon mélange. En ce qui me concerne, c'est une voiture, je vais même une femme de couleur. Non, je m'en reviendrai que je serais plutôt un gay. Je serais un gay, par exemple.
Tu vas me dire que les Haïtiens, mais ils arrivent d'Haïti, ils connaissent leur géographie, ils savent qu'en Haïti, ils savent que la rue Biry commence au nord de l'Antalon, puis elle commence au sud de Chagnon-Roy. Bon, comment est-ce que tu fais faire ça? Non, je sais pas. C'est la topographie. Tu vas me dire que tu connaissais ça. Pendant qu'un gars qui est élevé dans le quartier, c'est une question de bon sens. C'est une question de bon sens, oui, mais tu viens de faire c'est une question de bon sens. Tu appelles ça du bon sens? Tu me poses une question, laisse-moi répondre au moins. Laissez-moi
Tu vas faire un crack, un Haïtien va arriver ici.
bingo, passe le paquet, c'est beau.
Il va rentrer là, il va s'en débarrasser. Ça se voit qui ça voudra. Le gars, il faut qu'il soit super calé, hein. Voyons donc, j'ai eu de la misère. Je suis né à Montréal. Puis ils l'ont passé sur mon quartier. J'ai eu de la misère à le passer.
Ils nous prennent pour des boucs émissaires. Comme quoi, c'est nous autres qui engendrons cette situation économique-là. Ah, ils devraient tout ça retourner dans leur pays.
Donc, un instant, pardon.
Ils disent qu'on est raciste, là. Les Grecs, les Arméniens, ils sont formés de compagnie de taxi, Champlain Taxi. Les autres, en fait, ils ne sont pas une compagnie, Boule Noire Taxi. La bonne femme qui va avoir les noirs, elle appelle Boule Noire Taxi. Quand je joue au foot, c'est la Boule Noire qui fait ça faire.
Quand ils crient, on le fait formal.
Tu raciste, toi, Charles?
Les noirs, là, allez voir les taxis, en général, à notre niveau, nous autres.
That's very interesting. These comments are from the police officer in that vehicle. And where he's driving right now, it's in Montreal-Nord, in front of l'Arena Garon. There you go.
Tu regardes un taxi sale, tu regardes le chauffeur, tu te trompes pas. Nous autres, on est dans circulation, on les voit tout de suite. Je te dis, c'est effrayant. Ils font peur à aller. Moi, je ne prends pas le taxi pour ça. C'est une bonne opinion, ça, d'une police? Hein?
Is it a good opinion from a police force? He said, you know, we see their taxi cabs and they're all dirty. We won't take them because they're so dirty and stuff like that. So that's what they're mentioning. I wish I could translate everything that I just mentioned, but it's so blatant racism that I guess you get the point, unfortunately. So this video is in 1985, the other one was in 1962. Oui, exactement. C'est ça que j'allais dire. Ça s'appelle Montréal-Haïti. Ou Québec-Haïti. It's Québec, puis in parenthèse, comment? Exactly, it's 80. So you can see there's the English version also, you can add the translation, you can look it up on the ONF NFB website. You can find that out.
She's done a lot of work for the Haitian community. She has another film called Pompéen, which is really good.
Exactly. So I'm very glad you know that. But what's interesting is that, you know, you're saying, this is like 30 years ago, it's 50 years ago. Well, let's see what's happening today. You know, we had some comment from police officers. I don't know if you guys all saw that. The policier that made some racist comment when he was ready to leave for 80. He actually mentioned that those fucking niggas, they don't look very intelligent. So I'm gonna go down there to see that they're not intelligent. And that was a police officer that was supposed to go help the police force in 80. And that's in 2010. That was what he mentioned. So, and you know, there's stuff like that all over the place. And right now, you know, with la charte des valeurs and everything, I know I have very little time. Okay.
So the Q&A after.
Yeah, Q&A, yeah, the Q&A. I don't know if you're gonna have any time for that Q&A. And there was also the incident of the Muslim woman in the bus. I don't know if all you guys saw that. That's in 2012. He's saying, go back home, and that's everything with les accommodements de la charte des valeurs. So that was bringing. So these are the kind of, you know, incident that you say, well, you know, those are isolated situations. They don't happen to everybody all the time. And there was a survey that was conducted in 2007 by la firme Léger. And the survey asked the Quebecers if they were racist. That was the question. No, it's very simple. That's what the question that was asked. And 16% of the Quebecers of French descent, they consider themselves being strongly or average racist. 16%, yeah. And 43%, they said they were slightly racist. I don't know what slightly means, you know, if you can be slightly racist, but you know, that's what I say. And that's in 2007, okay? So what do we ask ourselves is that, did anybody saw a campaign to combat racism over here? I never saw a campaign against that. Did we saw some courses or anything like that? But La Charte des Valeurs, we saw some had a commercial. That's very important for some party. So you have to keep that in mind, you know. So yeah. And now you wonder why half of allophones and anglophones, they are thinking about leaving the province. I'll give you another number that is very important, and that is a direct result of that, is that the general population, the unemployment rate, it's 8% for the general population of Quebec. For the black, it's 16%, and for the people of Arabic descent, it's 3 times 8%. So, and that's what's even worse about that, is that there was a McGill study on blacks in 2006, 2007, that showed that blacks have more diplomas than the average Quebec population, but still a black person with a university degree will have less chances of finding a job than a white person with no high school diploma. A black person with a second cycle university diploma will make $20,000 less starting at his job than a white person with the same diploma. Also, the level of scholarity from the academic level of newly arrived immigrants, they have more diplomas as well when they're getting in the country, because you have to understand that Canada is looking for people that have lots of degrees from outside, from those different communities outside, or those different countries, that they have the skills for jobs, or that they are economically strong. So these are the kind of citizens that they're looking for. So most of the immigrants that are coming in the country, they actually have a larger or bigger academic level than most of the population. Now let's talk about the media influence, because we have lots of time, I guess, to talk about that. About 2 minutes. So I'm pretty sure, with knowing me, I'm going to be very fast on that. So I'm just going to show you some images, and you know, we'll see how fast it goes. It's just the internet is also very slow on this computer, so I'm not going to sell you a computer. It's actually a Mac, it seems like, so there you go. I'm just going to bring these information as fast as they come. So let's see this one. So this is a family, we say not drama, somebody that killed his family, of course. And I'm just going to show you, just if it can go faster than that. Anyways, what I wanted to do is that, because I won't be able to do it because it's so slow right now, is that I wanted to show you lots of images of people from Quebec, white people who killed their family members. And I had like 10 videos or 10 articles of that, of white people shooting or killing their family. I'm not showing you that because I want you to kill your family, of course. It's just that the impression that it's going to generate from watching over and over a white person killing somebody is that you're going to find exactly the same thing that we are doing with the blacks and the other racialized minorities, is that when you only see these kind of images, you'll end up thinking that the Quebecers are killing their families, and that's what they are great at. That's the only thing they do. So that's what you end up thinking, unfortunately. And they don't have this impression because, of course, for them, you know, they're just part of the majority, so you don't see that. But when you see over and over and over the Shafia family, everybody knows the Shafia family, right? How come you know the Shafia family? Of course, you know, what happened is not something that should have happened, but it gets commercialized. You're talking about honor crime and these kind of stories. But what Guy Turcotte did to his children is exactly the same thing. It's very similar. He was betrayed because of jealousy, because his wife cheated on him, according to him, so he decided to kill his children. So it's a very similar story, but it's not treated the same way. And also when you take a look at the picture, I'll show you the picture of this case with the drame familial à Allemand. Is just put drame familial, look of all the pictures that you will see pictures like that where you don't see the family when it's not a racialized minority. But as soon as it's a racialized minority, I can assure you will see the face of the person. And it's going to be a police shot or a police portrait. So that's what you'll end up seeing, unfortunately. So this is kind of the media. And also you have the influence of the media, because when you see somebody which racialized minority? No, I must have 2 minutes and I'm not even in the jail or anything like that. Okay. It's okay. So, well, it goes so quickly, so I apologize for that. So now I just want to make you watch, it's going to be very quickly, it's La Famille Pinot-Caron. I don't know if you guys are familiar with La Famille Pinot-Caron.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yeah.
Je sais pas s'il y en a d'entre vous qui sont allés dans une mosquée au Maroc. Non? Bon. Puis peut-être que si vous poussez
Ouais, c'est
pas
exactement
vos
ça.
affaires
Quand ça, c'est
à
que tu connais shit
c'est
par
moi,
contre.
c'est pas en Ottawa.
Merci. Ah, ok, c'est pour ça.
Il y a environ 20 ans, je me promenais seul dans les rues de Montréal et j'étais en sécurité. Mais plus maintenant, car les gangs de rue ont pris le contrôle. Et là, certains organismes et dirigeants de partis politiques, dans le but de se faire élire ou réélire, sont prêts à nous faire reculer de 1000 ans en arrière ou plus avec des guerres de religion. Est-il possible que la secte du temple solaire soit de retour parmi nous? Si une personne avec une cagoule a le droit de se promener en public et même de voter aux élections, pourquoi moi je n'aurais pas le même droit? La manière que vous orientez ça, oui, au niveau du gouvernement, ils n'auront pas le droit à se camoufler au complet, mais par contre, ils vont aller embarrasser les rues de Montréal avec ça. Je suis aucunement raciste. Dans mes voyages,
Of course, it's not racist. Everybody says
on se
that.
mêlait au gros poisson de parler.
Mais ils veulent qu'on soit obligé à respecter les règles de leur pays. Chez nous, on refuse que nos enfants se promènent avec un couteau, on refuse que les femmes soient battues, on refuse l'esclavage.
Chez nous, she's saying that. Oh, this is so good.
On refuse que nos enfants, et même nous les adultes,
Over, you have to understand that they refuse to be their woman, they refuse slavery, and they refuse their children to walk with their knives. So it's very important. And before that, he was saying that, you know, the gang members are taking control of Montreal City, and even the group, which is a sect, j'ai oublié le nom de la secte. Anyway, she mentioned a sect, so everybody was taking over, and same thing for the Muslim. So you have to understand, when you see this kind of statement that were done at la Commission des Institutions in the Parliament of Quebec, where are they getting this kind of information about the city of Montreal? Where are they getting this kind of information? Can we say these guys are not, I don't want to say they're racist, but I can certainly say that they are very ignorant and they get their information from the media. Because what are you seeing in media? You're seeing gang members, you're seeing Muslim, and every time that you're seeing them, it's something wrong they're doing. And that's what they're mentioning. They're mentioning what they know. And what do they know? They know TVA. They know those mass media. That's where they gather their information about. And that's why, that's what they're repeating. Because if that's all you see, that's what you will repeat. And you finish, you're finally going to believe what you see on TV. And all of you know is Montreal is not controlled by gang members. We are not surrounded by terrorists. The city of Montreal is not being taken over. We're not beating our wives in the street with rocks and stuff like that. And there's too many women being beaten, by the way. I just want to make sure also. But it's not a situation that we're doing in the street, and that should happen no matter what. But they're just focused, hypnotized by what they see in the media. And man, I got so little time. I have to cut some stuff. No. Of course. So yeah, and you can say also the best example is that who's writing on that also, because we have the political party that are striving very strongly on that, because in 2007 there was les accommodements raisonnables, and l'ADQ was saying that we don't accept that over here, it's not going to happen anymore, we don't want les accommodements raisonnables, we have our values, and we have to make sure we prevent that. And at the same time, Journal de Montréal was doing a whole campaign about les accommodements raisonnables. It was from newspaper to media all over the place. And it lasted like for a good 3 months. They had the sugar shack, not the sugar shack, but comment tu appelles ça, les cabanes de sirop d'érable. So there was different stories. There was also the YMCA. There was actually only 5 stories, but it lasted for 3 months. And that's all they talk about. And it went into the politics, and that's all the ADQ got the opposition. They got elected the opposition at la Chambre des communes in Quebec. And that's why today, we have La Charte des Valeurs, which is held by the PQ because they said we're never going to lose the identity. of the Quebec identity. So that's why they're exactly on the same thing that happened in 2007, and they put the Charte des Valeurs, because we don't have any problem with les accommodements raisonnables. You live in Montreal, you don't see that kind of problem. But for them, you know, it's important for the region to send that message, because the people like les Pinot-Caron, they will watch the media and they'll be afraid of Montreal, of the gang members, they'll be afraid of anybody of Arabic descent, so that's what they'll be scared of. So before, and also I just want to mention, if you take a look in the commercials or just everything in the sitcoms in Quebec, most of the time you don't see visible minorities or racialized minorities, as I like to say. If you take a look at the series called Trauma, which is a series in a television sitcom on Radio-Canada, you see all the faces that you see over there. That's actually an hospital in Montreal, okay? And you see all the same faces, you know, it's everybody from French descent. But one information that you have to know is that there was a survey that was conducted at the CHUM, okay? And the number of doctors that were from French descent white, it's 1 out of 5. And over there you don't even have one racialized minority. And that's what you see in the media. You don't see the minorities. When you see them, it's only in the news media. And the same thing happened with the series Les Jeunes Loups, the first episode. It was honor killing, gang members on the same day. It's, you see, that was the episode of Les Jeunes Loups. This guy was faced with a dilemma with gang members. So you get to fear when you're watching that in Chibougamau, that, my God, there's something going wrong in Montreal. We have to be scared if we go over there. And what happened in Montreal-North, that was also the incident that happened in Montreal-North. I was asked by lots of people to visit Montreal-North to show them where are the gang members. Am I going to need a weapon, a firearm, or something like that to go in Montreal-North? Lots of people ask me that question. And, you know, you go in Montreal-North, you won't even see gang members. I'm not saying there's no gang members, but I'm saying you have to look for them if you really want to fight them. So, yeah, cops on the street you will see, of course. Cops, it's very easy to see. Gang members. Now, I just want to talk quickly on the jail system, the drug factor, and more security to fight everything. Terrorism, really, you know. So where are we getting that? And I'm going to give you the example of USA right now. In 1988, the budget to fight a war on drug, what is a war on drug? I don't know. But you know, when you say war, you're fighting something, so you have to win. And as an American, you know, you like to win those kind of wars. And it's a war that you're never going to win, of course, because there's more drugs in America than there was ever before. But you know, it's a war, so we make sure it's a war. So the budget for the war on drugs in 1988, it was $3.35 billion. In 2013, it's $25.6 billion to fight the war of drugs. And we have more drugs in the United States now than it was ever in 1988. And that budget came with laws passed by Ronald Reagan. If you guys are very familiar with Ronald Reagan, he's the one that cut lots of money that was allocated to the different community groups, and it was very important for him to privatize everything. But that's another story. I'm not going to go on that because it's going to be very long if I go on this. I'm just going to show you a clip from Waiting for Superman and give you some warning afterwards, but it's just interesting the point of view that you bring.
State correctional institution at Pittsburgh. It's where a bunch of my buddies are. Rather than getting on with their life, the vast majority of the guys end up here or dead.
68% of inmates in Pennsylvania are high school dropouts. The state spends $33,000 a year on each prisoner, which makes the total cost of the average prison term $132,000. The average private school costs $8,300 a year. So for the same amount, we could have sent a prison inmate to a private school from kindergarten through 12th grade and still had over $24,000 left for college.
It's a very expensive hotel, man. You gotta feed them 3 meals.
So there you go. You know, it's a very expensive hotel. I'm just going to give you a warning about Waiting for Superman. If you want to see that documentary, it's available on Vimeo right now. So if you look through Vimeo, you'll see it. But you know, it's a very right-wing documentary that wants to promote private school mostly, and they want to get rid of all the syndicate people and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. But there's still some interesting comments in that documentary. But you can take a look of what's going on right now in the States. Is that we have a population of 2,267,000 inmates right now in the United States. That's the highest number of people incarcerated in the world. The next country, it's Russia, and it's far from that. Half of the prisoners are incarcerated for drug offenses. And drug offenses is very soft offense. You know, you just have drugs and you get arrested for your drug, and then you spend some time in jail. And the punishment falls differently for the people of color, of course. The blacks make up 50% of the states and local prisoners incarcerated for drug crimes. Black kids are 10 times more likely to be arrested for drug crimes compared to the white ones, even though white kids are more likely to abuse drugs. So you'll get more chances to be in jail if you're a black kid, especially when it comes to drugs. And once again, I got a nice little video that I'm going to show you from a documentary that was done over here, because we have to understand when the laws were created for drug offenses over here, it all originated from racist reasons. It started with the Chinese people. So I'm just going to show you that short clip. Once again from the ONF, it's from a documentary that is called Société sous influence, which is very interesting. If you take a look at this documentary, you'll really appreciate it. It's one of my favorite, and I'll give you another documentary afterwards that you can take a look at. Of course, being a documentary.
Alors, comme vous le savez, Madame la juge, quand on fait l'historique des lois sur les droits au Canada, on se rend compte finalement que les premières lois sur les droits ont été adoptées par le gouvernement fédéral, essentiellement pour des raisons racistes, xénophobes. Je m'explique. En 1900, il y a eu une immigration massive des Chinois, des Orientaux en Occident, le long de la côte pacifique, principalement aux États-Unis et au Canada. Il y en a qui avaient pris l'habitude culturelle de fumer de l'opium. Alors, leur besoin de travail era assez grande, ils fumaient leur pipée d'opium puis s'endormaient. Mais Mackenzie King, sous la pression des lignes de tempérance, a fait une enquête, a été scandalisé de découvrir que la ville avait émis des permis pour exploiter des opiumeries. 15 jours plus tard, on a eu la première loi sur l'opium. Et la loi était extrêmement sévère. Toute personne qui était en contact était soupçonnée d'exploiter une opiumerie ou de faire le commerce de l'opium était sujet à déportation. Donc, on en a profité pour se débarrasser des Chinois. C'est comme ça qu'on a eu la première loi sur les drogues au Canada. Par la suite, on a ajouté en 1911 la cocaïne, parce que la cocaïne était utilisée par les Noirs, les musiciens noirs principalement.
So there you go, you have your history. You know why the first laws were created. You're doing the translation for her, so that's nice if that's what you're doing. The first laws that were created was against the Chinese because they were smoking opium in 1900s, and they created that law to get rid of the Chinese people. And same thing was created in 1911 for the black people. It was cocaine. So they started to create those laws against drug already in an early age, and it's still lasting today. You might be thinking, well, you know, the cost of a prisoner is not the same over than in the United States. Well, actually, the cost of prisoner in the federal prison over here, it's $322 per day to have a prisoner over here in Canada, in the federal prison. The same cost is different, of course, for the provincial prison. It's $177 in Quebec. But if you take that $322 per day that is costing us right now per prisoner per day, it's $117,000 per year for one prisoner over in Canada. So that's the amount of money that we're spending per prisoner. And what is very sad about that is that most people incarcerated in Canada, actually 76% are incarcerated for non-violent crimes, such as drugs, of course, mostly, and also a property offense, impaired driving, and other non-violent offenses. So I guess you're seeing where I'm going. You know, for me, I'm not very pleased with all the prison that we have over here in Canada, and that's something that I don't really think that can solve a lot of solution. It can solve a lot of problems that we have over here. I think there's other things that we can have to fight that. But what's even a worry is that the Native people, the rate of Native people being arrested over those past 10 years has raised by 46%. And for the blacks, for the past 10 years, it's 80% of the population that is, it has raised. the number of black people being in jail right now, it's 10%, although they represent only 3% of the population. So it's overcrowded with black people, with First Nation people, and that's what we have. And what's even worse about that is that the black people are more likely to go for the maximal security prison, and also they're getting put in isolation more often than any other prisoners right now. And you might think, well, we don't have the same problem over in Canada with the prison right now, because, we're getting less crime and stuff like that. Well, we have a government that wants to be tough on crime. And right now in Canada, we are getting levels of prisoner that we never saw in the past. We have 15,000 federal prisoners, and we have, that's on the federal level, and in a total of 55,000 inmates in Canada right now. So if we have more prisoners, and it means safer streets like the conservatives are saying right now, the United States will have the safest streets in the world, which is not the case, of course. And why do we have so many prisons? And why is it that, in the United States, the prisons are ruling almost the law that is created by the government? Is that in 1983, there was two groups, the CCA and the GEO group, that founded the first private prison. And that was in 1983, they had the first private prison, and that was the Correction Corporation of America. Since then, they now have 66 prisons. And it's a business of $3 billion per year. And what they're doing is that they put 45 million in the past 10 years, pushing lobby or giving donation to Barack Obama and other groups to pass stronger laws. And what kind of laws they're trying to pass right now? They're trying to pass a law to detain longer illegal immigrants. So when they give those illegal immigrants, when they detain them for longer, they make more money, because every prisoner is actually a source of money for those private prisons. And you might be thinking, well, in Canada we don't have that problem, we don't have these kinds of private prison, because there's no private prison. These two groups right now are in Ottawa pushing the privatization of prisons in Canada. And I'm going to show you the article just to make sure that I'm not making up this story. But they're really trying to push that right now. And what that tells you is that being a prisoner, it's actually a business. And if you invest in the business of prison, you might be making a lot of money, because when you have a prison, you have prisoners. Whether you have a recession or whether you don't have a recession, you still have prisoners. You'll still be making your money. And the money that you are being funded, it's paid by the taxpayers. So you end up having a source of financing that is actually never going to stop. It's always going to come in. So the more prisoners you have, the more money you'll be making. So I'm just going to cut it right now, because I had some other stuff that I wanted to see, but I think it's very long. And also, if you want to take a look at the documentary that is very interesting, that will talk about the business of a drug. It's called How to Make Money Off Drugs. It's a very funny title, but it's very interesting, because at the end you'll see who really benefits from making money off drugs. And it's a documentary that was done in the States. So if you want to take a look at that documentary, it's actually on YouTube as well, so you go take a look at it. So that'll be the end for my presentation today. So thank you for the time. Sorry for...
Well, actually, can we give him another round of applause? So we're going to take your questions now for the Q&A. So please just make them brief and end them with a question mark. And I'll take one at a time, so you can put your hands up.
I just had a question really about constitutional rights. It's something that is not really focused on. Like I don't remember growing up and actually kind of focusing on what our actual constitutional rights and the Charter of Rights is in Canada. And I'm just interested because I've been looking specifically for to get copies of it, and it seems like in Canada it's almost impossible to find in an easy way the Charter of Rights. So I just had I just wanted to ask you as a police officer as well.
Great question, and that's something that we really strive on. We want to make sure that, especially the youths, they receive courses regarding their rights. And it's actually something that was mentioned at the end of the coroner's inquest, that he said that the youths should know how to react when facing a police officer. But I was really opposed by that, because I really want to make sure that the youths knew their right, first of all. That's what's very important. So I was hoping that he was going to change that. But we give booklets with COBP. I don't know if you know COBP, it's the Coalition Against Police Brutality. And we give booklets to the youths that tells them what are their rights. It's actually like 5 to 10 pages. And if you look on their website, you can ask them to receive those booklets. But it should be taught in school, because if you know your rights, the police officer should know that. But the police officer should also know their rights, because if you saw the video that I showed a little bit earlier, the person was asking the right question, and he should have answered those things. So what's the biggest problem is that there's too many youths not doing enough complaints. And if they were doing more complaints, it could change a lot of the action by the police force. And that was part of the solution that I wanted to talk about at the end of my presentation, but I didn't have enough time for that. But complaints is one part of the solution that we're not looking at. So, and youth should be, because the case of Freddie Vaniova is actually a result of that also, because L'Agent Jaloux Lapointe, who shot him, a lot of citizens was complaining about his action in the community. One kid said that he saw him in the park rolling like Rambo and pulling out his gun in front of him like that, but he never complained. He said that afterwards when he knew that was the guy that killed him. He said, oh, that's probably him. I know it's going to be him for sure. But he never filed a complaint. If he had filed a complaint, things might have been different nowadays.
To answer, so for youth education, there is a program that's called inequality. It's French and English. They have a youth zone. They offer workshops. They're not implemented in school, but they do work with schools. So if you're looking to, those are lawyers that don't practice law, but they work as consultants for you in regards to all kinds of, like, it could be work, it could be your fundamental rights, it could be anything.
Just feels like it should be something that is basic in education.
Right.
Totally, totally. Should be there. What's it called, Marielle?
It's Educaloi. EDUCALOI. The blue scarf.
I think that, it's cool to talk about like solutions, like short-term solutions, like education, public education programs to know our rights, but it kind of feels like it's putting like the onus on like the victims of a violent system and not on like the perpetrators or the systems in power. And it's like it's not like a few bad apples. Like, this is the police institution and this is the criminal justice institution, and like filing a complaint doesn't mean justice. And what does justice look like in like an inherently violent colonial white supremacist patriarchy system? But
Well, you're right. Especially me, I filed a complaint because there was a police officer that actually threatened me to kill me, because we were infiltrated when I was part of Montreal-Nord Républik, and I'm still part of Montreal-Nord Républik. We were infiltrated by a police officer, and one time at a rally I said, you guys have to be careful, because there's somebody that is asking for some citizen to commit some violent crime. And you gotta be careful, because he was calling some people in the community saying, well, if you guys are down, we can do whatever. If you're ready for war, I'm gonna be there for you guys. So he was asking people in the community. And when I said that, 5 minutes afterwards, I received a phone call. And that was him calling me, saying that, well, Will Prosper, you better wash your bag because you're wanted. And I filed a complaint at the police committee, and they said, they denied the request that I've done with the police committee, because they said it's going to reveal some security measures of the SPVM.
Well, there you go.
So it's not the best solution, but there's other places, and that's why I want to show you this one. That was a case that was done by the CRA, and that's a black Montreal that was awarded $30,000 from the city of Montreal because he was being refused a promotion. And he faces, every time he was trying to get a promotion, somebody else was getting the promotion. So he was awarded $30,000. So there's other ways that you can go around that, but I think it's very important, even though, to try to file complaints. And I don't believe in the police system that you complain to your offender. There's a problem with that right away. But unfortunately, there's other means, but I think it's important to do it the best way you can, unfortunately.
Did you have a question?
I was just wondering if your perspective, as a former police officer, obviously informs what you're doing, and whether you can speak to any cultural training, if there is at all, because we think of, so-called special units that are supposed to be trained to deal with shelterless folks in Montreal, are supposed to be sensitive to First Nations communities, and I think we're echoing, in theory, these people work for us, and yet obviously we're feeling, and with the privatization of these sectors, that it is citizens that are being criminalized for all these inherent reasons. And yet, is there any, actual going on to this inside the police force? Is it really this brotherhood of, don't ask, don't tell, protect each other? And how do we reinforce accountability for that? Because I think those of us who are familiar, go through the motions of that complaint system, and yet we're also kind of reinforcing what little is in place. And there's calls for independent inquiries, and there's great work being done, but I mean, it seems like we're so far down in that culture. How do we?
Just to give you an idea, as soon as I came out of the training facilities of Regina for the RCMP, they talked to us about racial profiling and everything like that, but very slightly, not that much. And then as soon as I got on the field, the trainer that I had, because you do training in the academy, then you have another period of 6 months to 1 year that you do in the field to make sure that you become a police officer. As soon as I came out, and that trainer told me, the first thing that person told me is that everything that you learn at the police academy, forget about it. I'm going to show you what it is. Exactly. So a lot of what's going on, it's repeating what his predecessor was telling that person. So it's hard to get away from that system, For me, I believe in community organizing themselves instead of the police. If that could happen, that could prevent a lot of things. You can have a community judge approach system that, if a young person steals something, he faces a similar kind of, not tribunal, like to a court or not, but a community, based people that will sit with him and say, okay, we can do something with you. You want to work in this organization and stuff like that. I think there's other means that will help us to fight that, but I don't really believe that the police force will be the answer for anything, because they have a mentality that is, like you mentioned, it's very l'omerta. It's very gang mentality. I remember when I was at the academy, I bought a shirt that mentioned the biggest street gang in the world. And I bought that at the RCMP depot shop. So that was a shirt for the RCMP that said the biggest street gang in the world. So if you already start with that, it's going to be hard to go manage through that. But,
that's the thing. They're having fun up there. That's what drives me insane. Is if these guys, they're armed to the teeth and they're coming after me, and I mentioned this publicly so many times, I'm 6'1", I weigh 180 pounds, I don't give a shit. And that's what sucks, is that no matter what, at the end of the day, even though he's wrong as hell, I'm gonna be wronger because I defended my life, I defended my body. And there must be something we can do non-violently to turn that around, because it will get violent if it keeps going like that. And it's not because I want it to get violent, it's because people eventually will snap. And like Freddie, one kid, and Montreal-Nord just went, and I do not blame them. I was like, yeah, show them who we are together. Stop shooting people, you know what I'm saying? Stop just being idiots. So I mean, I don't know, I think maybe we need more discussions on how to nip it in the bud directly, instead of little complaints and little $30,000 settlements. That doesn't change anything.
It doesn't change anything, you're right, but
yeah.
But it's some people do videos. You'll see some videos that they do sting operation, filming police officer doing some stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you can also do that. And I'll take your question for sure. Don't you worry. But just just take there was a case of Farshan Mohammedi and the other guy the homeless person that was shot not too long ago. What's the biggest problem right now is what the police officers are being taught also. We have police officers right now, and that's a problem, but we need to try to change that the best way we can. And that's when we mobilize, that's when we talk, that's when we say something is wrong. So because we will be facing police officers no matter what, and that situation will eventually happen. So what they should do, police officers, me personally, I send, not messages, but I try to do my best to do conferences and stuff like that to inform in certain ways what they could do. And what they're doing nowadays is that police officers are rushing faster and faster and faster in a situation. They're not creating a perimeter. They're rushing towards the situation, and they're actually escalating everything. Because in the past 7 years, the number of people being shot by the police, Montreal police, has risen by 75%. So it's more and more and more people are getting shot faster and faster and faster. In the case of Frederic Villanueva was exactly that. It took a minute. Same thing that what happened with Bruno Hamel, who was slashing garbage bags in the street. And Patrick Limoges got shot by ricochet bullets. So why were they rushing? Take their time, make sure you secure the situation, and then talk to the person. But they don't even do that because they're taught to shot 2 times in the body, in the mask, and 1 time in the head, and ask question later. And there's no police impunity as well.
That's the main issue. Like, it's almost as if they're testing that impunity or something. Like,
it's not they're testing it. There's been
already established.
There's been 436 cases of deaths in the past 20 years, which were related to police force all over Quebec. And there's only 3 cases that had charges about it, and none of them were found guilty. So that's a lot.
There's 4 questions.
Sorry.
There's
Yes.
4 questions. You were actually first. It's okay?
Okay. It's more of just a comment about the whole complaint thing, is that I feel that sometimes people don't realize that there's kind of a hierarchy in the complaint system, and you need to know your allies in your community. My mom she retired now, but she was a school principal, and she was in a position that, because of the connection that she had with the youth in her school, and et cetera, that when she filed a complaint compared to if they file a complaint or if their parents file a complaint, it's not the same thing that happens, My mom, I have adopted brothers, and they're Arabic, and my mom drives a Mercedes Benz because she wants to, whatever, and the number of times that she's been arrested just for driving her car is like ridiculous. But when she files a complaint and they know her profile, they know who she is, and et cetera, it goes straight to the director, as opposed to when, a youth who's like 16 years old and doesn't have any sort of, rights really, is able to do that. So I think that, sometimes we feel really powerless, but the thing is that we live in a society that is a hierarchy, and we should use that to our advantage in the sense that if you know people that are on your side and happen to have the power, make sure that they know about the problem and make sure that they are doing something about it. It's like it's so easy for us to just complain and be like, well, I can't really do anything about it. But there are people that actually can do things about it, and they actually care, but often they kind of have like so many other things to do or don't know what's going on in the community, So bridging that gap is extremely important.
A lot of people don't like my comment. Sorry. What? Sorry.
And in that case, we kind of feel less powerless, because it's not like, yes, our complaints don't really necessarily go anywhere, but if you want that one complaint to go somewhere, definitely make sure that there's a mass and also someone important in their eyes that is making that complaint.
Definitely.
Did you want to ask a question
No, but sure.
before you leave?
I can submit you a list. I don't have a list. I have it over there, but I can definitely submit you a list, or I can give it to. Yeah, on the webpage, or if you send me a message through Facebook, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
Will Prosper, I'll send it to you, all the different links.
Yeah, you.
I'm just wondering about your work with youth and how you perceive the school system either supporting them or is it really aware, and that was a really nice story about the school being supportive, but I'm just kind of wondering, are teachers aware, are schools aware, do they have the capacity to help educate youth about their rights, or does there need to be work done also with educators?
There needs to be a lot of work done with the educators right now, because there's nothing, I think they have a lot on their plates already. And if they take their own time to do that, that's some extra work. So it's not everybody that's willing to go through this extra work. And plus, a lot of organizations that are talking about their rights, the school system feel that they are a threat to the police work. So I won't be able to speak in a school to give them their rights. But lots of community center or organization, youth organization, they can do that, but even them, they don't have access to the high school. So it's something that, you know, they do that. Otherwise, they give pamphlets, tracts, flyers, pamphlets. They give flyers, and then they ask them to come to a meeting when they can speak to them for their rights. But it should be something that is taught in school for sure. I think it will help a lot of the problem that we have in our community.
So there were 2 questions, Alicia?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you could speak to like practice of cop watching, if you know if that's something that's happening in an organized way in Montreal and if you think it's effective.
I know there was a lot of cop watch, especially done by one person who was working a lot on that. It was actually really good, but cop watch is something, an initiative that is done by a personal person. But there was a cop watch website that was on the COBP, and there was a link to it. If you want more information, I think you can go on the COBP website and you'll find more information about cop watch. And I think it's very important, but that practice is not being done a lot over here. In the States, it's very good. There's places in the States, especially in Los Angeles, where they have great groups that does cop watch. And I think it helps a lot to protect the citizen from the police, unfortunately. So
I think we have time for about 1 or 2 more questions.
I just wanted to bring a point up. You were talking about the levels of shootings that have happened, escalating. The last few months, I had come back. I was living in England the last 5 years, and I was living there during the riots.
Okay.
Now, the Institute of Racial Relations that is in England, they have said, through statistics, that in the last 15 years, there have been over 300 deaths within police custody. And the thing that started the riot, which was Mark Duggan being killed by the Special Forces, the Trident Force there, he was considered to have been in police custody when he was just murdered in the street. Do you know if there's any statistics as well within Montreal?
Yes, there is statistics. I don't have them, but I know I have them at home.
Okay.
The number of people being killed by police officers. There's also a little video that was sent out like a couple of days ago that tells you in the past 20 years who has been shot, what was the name, and I believe it was done by it's somebody that's called Alex Popovich, who sent me that link, who works for like CRAP, and which is a coalition against police brutality. There's 2 of them. There's CRAP and COBP, and there's a video for that. So if you ask, send me a message through Facebook, I will forward that information for you for sure. And it's interesting because in 1982, Newfoundland police in Canada did not have any weapon also. They did not have any firearms. So they just recently got firearms. And me, I'm a strong advocate against firearms by everybody, for everybody. So I'm very against that. So it's interesting with the stats that you mentioned for people being killed in custody. So.
So last question over here.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up what you were saying about mobilizing and sort of who to talk to and how that makes a difference. I guess it's really scary. Well, it is really scary. The idea of criminalizing poverty, criminalizing race, racializing people, and then criminalizing them in a culture where, you know, as you were saying, among Quebecers, 26% of people who don't graduate from high school aren't exposed to a lot of stuff, and where hate is legislated and profitable. I'm wondering about Denis Coderre, who seems to speak his mind and speak frankly, and I'm wondering about leveraging that and how to leverage that. He seems to be someone who's out and about talking with people who nobody was talking with before in political sort of circles, and I'm just curious what you think about him.
Denis Coderre. Denis Coderre was my deputy for many years in Montreal-Nord because he was actually the federal deputy for Montreal-Nord. He's somebody that's the best person for PR. He's going to say, hey, ça passe, ça fait. He's going to say it in Italian. He's going to say it in every languages. But when something happens, like the case of Freddie Villanueva, we never heard anything from him. Never. He never spoken about that. What about the dropout rates in Montreal-Nord? He never spoke about that also. He's just somebody that will go and shake hands with everybody. But when it's time to take action, he's never done anything. And that's why the number of poverty, the level of poverty in Montreal-Nord has risen since he was there. Because the Liberals take their population for granted. And that's Denis Coderre that was there for almost, it's 12 years or 15 years. And then, you know, the Liberals on the provincial level, they were there for 30 years and nothing has changed in Montreal-Nord. So it's worse and worse and worse through the years. So I don't really believe in Denis Coderre. So for his action, yeah, he needs something. Because right now I'm taking action also for what's happening in the Dominican Republic, where they remove the statues of people living in the Dominican Republic since 1929. And Denis Coderre is always there for the Asian community. But we ask him to speak against what's going on in the Dominican Republic, and he never said a word. But when it's time to get,
Dirty.
No, when it's time to go for a buffet or some stuff like that with the community, shake hands, he will be there. When it's time to get that vote, you can count on him. When it's time to take action, you'll never see him. So I don't really like that person, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry. So, but he knows my name, so when I meet him, he's going to shake my hand.
Okay, so thanks to all of you for coming out. Thanks to the team at the Center for Gender Advocacy and Maya. Thank you, Will.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. And check us out on genderadvocacy.org. Chris Krass is speaking on Monday, Feminism for Men, Feminism for Everybody. Thank you. Good night.
C'est pas dans l'absence de couleur que se cache l'espoir. C'est quand la dernière fois que tu t'es fait braquer une arme par une gang de rue de ta belle banlieue agréable. C'est pas que le problème n'existe pas, c'est qu'il existe presque pas, mais on te le dit pas. Parce que plein de gens tirent bénéfice des problèmes semi-visibles. Moi, tout ce que je vois, ce sont plein d'organismes mercantiles. La ville de Montréal fait porter le blâme aux enfants.